Shattered Veil is out now and the community reception has been overwhelmingly positive, and I have to agree. It's one of the best maps we've gotten post Black Ops 4 and even challenges Citadel d'Amour for the best map on the game. All I can say is that Black Ops 6 has desperately needed this map. Just a heads up, but I'm gonna be discussing the story and intel details on Shattered Veil, so if you don't want some sweaty guy heavy breathing into his mic spoiling things, you've been warned. Before we discuss Shattered Veil, let's do a quick recap on how Black Ops 6 Zombies has gone so far with the community. After going back and forth prior to the game's release on how Zombies is back versus dead, Terminus and Liberty Falls received mostly positive reviews on launch, though not without criticism. Common complaints were aimed at Mangler spam and the over-reliance of support streaks, but by and large, the vocal parts of the community were satisfied that it seemed to be a step in the right direction. Treyarch then followed it up with Citadel d'Amour, and the map lived up to the hype that had been built. So often a map gets hyped up only to be a disappointment, but thankfully Treyarch cooked with Citadel. The wonder weapons were loved, the quest and boss fight were popular, and the story was excellent. There were a few complaints, mainly the returns of amalgams from Terminus and the swords being unbalanced, but it was eventually tuned, and overall the map was an instant classic, in the same vein as Origins and Horizon Drak. However, trouble was looming over the horizon. It was around this time that players noticed something off about Sam's voice. It distinctly sounded different, and it was confirmed that due to the ongoing voice actor strike over protections related to AI, that longtime voice of Samantha Max's Julie Nathanson was replaced. It was especially jarring because you could go back to Terminus and Liberty Falls and you would hear the new voice actress rather than Julie. This of course was met with total fury, and justifiably so. Julie has been voicing Samantha since the start and was the second longest tenured voice after Nolan North as Richtofen, of course. This led to a wave of misinformation that the entire voice cast was getting replaced, and since most of the cast were members of the same union, it's not exactly unreasonable to think that it was going to happen. This began to erase the goodwill caused by a strong start to Zombies, with criticisms towards bundles and removals of exploits becoming far more common than praise. While it was awesome that Treyarch gave us another map with Season 2, that map, unfortunately to many, was crap. After the high that was Citadel d'Amour, the Tomb was a far smaller, simpler map, and while aesthetically I believe it's one of the strongest in recent years, the rest of the map was not well received. Fans are sick of amalgams after Terminus and Citadels, and you can imagine that people were not happy when they returned yet again to grab us from down the street. It was only made worse due to what Treyarch called an error that caused you to start taking damage from other zombies while grappled, leading to an almost guaranteed down should you get grabbed. This was patched later on, but still the damage was done. The other new enemy was the Shock Mimic, another reused enemy that once again grabs you. While they had only appeared in one map before, the reuse of Doppelgas was also not positively received, though they got less hate than the other two. Players weren't a fan of the main quest or the boss. Caused confusion at first as to why the map's wonder weapons or the ray gun, two commonly used and powerful weapons to use against bosses, did absolutely nothing to it. Finally, the lack of an intro cutscene was annoying enough to many, but the outro cutscene was considered extremely weak. The crew doesn't even speak for heaven's sake, with only Sam and Raptor 1 saying his generic "let's get out of here" line. With a dud of the map and the community's ire over the new Sam, as well as misinformation about Ravenov only having one new line in the Tomb, which let's be fair is factually incorrect, Treyarch absolutely had to deliver a hit with Season 3. But instead of a hit, Treyarch knocked it out of the park, into the street, and did the sickest bat flip. Much like Citadel d'Amour, there was hype building towards Shattered Veil, but there's no doubt it was more of a cautious optimism than the freight train hurtling towards release date as before. The community had been burned by the Tomb and didn't want to get their hopes up, which in my opinion is part of what happened with the Tomb. People were expecting Origins due to an excavation site in northern France, but Shattered Veil was honestly what I was expecting Citadel d'Amour to be. Much of the map takes place inside the enormous mansion, with some of it in the outside, and the atmosphere is fantastic. The map is beautiful, the inside destroyed and mysterious, while the outside portions being elegant and almost foreign. Well, as foreign as you can call West Virginia at least. Unlike the Tomb, the main quest has been well received by those who partake in those. It involves reaching Sam, crafting the ray gun Mark II, and upgrading it 3 different ways, completing 3 rituals, and battling a zombified Tyrannosaurus Rex. Man, I wish my sons were old enough to either watch or play zombies, because they would absolutely love to see that thing moving around. I think the Z-Rex, as it's fittingly called, might actually be the only real blemish on the quest, funny enough. Its final phase is just too fast and you can't get away when he hops on you. But overall, it's a fantastic quest and honestly almost on par with BO3 and BO4 quests. I personally love how the wonder weapons actually are a significant focus of the quest, requiring you to use all three of them to access liminal spaces and fight mini-bosses compared to Terminus, where you just had to tickle a tentacle, in the tomb where you just use the healing shot to activate rituals. Don't get me started on dabbing with the swords in Citadel Demore. The story also gets juicy on Shattered Vale. Weaver learns that he and Samantha were responsible for the death of Richtofen's wife and son in a botched attempt on his life, and that Sam is trying to create a body for herself and become Samantha Maxis, a point that's hinted at in an excellent intel you can find in the kitchen. It looks like Richtofen and the gang have dropped their animosity towards each other, at least for now, and will work together to defeat Sam. We also learn that the greatest security chief of all time is also going after Panos for what he did to Alpha Team, so here's hoping we see him in the next map. We also get more clues on who Panos is working for, and I may make a video on that because it intrigues me to get more clues. There's also some backstory about the previous owners of the mansion, and while that probably won't be too relevant to the story going forward, it's really cool world building to know what was going on before Richtofen came to town. Let's talk wonder weapons, one of my favorite aspects of any zombies map. The Ray Gun Mark II returns for the first time since BO4 with 3 new variants. The Mark II W acts like the Mark II X from Alpha Omega, but with the added effect of dropping a Wraithfire-esque attack. The Mark II P is like the Mark II Z, a shotgun-like effect, but with added effective runes that grant temporary invulnerability. There's even a callback to Modern Warfare 3 Zombies' Worm Boss when crafting the wonder weapon, as you find a statue of the worm in a chamber. Or maybe it's Leviathan or Jormungandr. Finally, the Mark II R fires like a marksman rifle, but with the added effect of dropping a pool of radioactive goop that kills huge numbers of zombies and done in the right spot. It's got the same color and corrosion theme that the Mark II Y had on Alpha Omega, but the effect is far different. It's hard for me to say what the best one is, but they're all awesome. The community has definitely seemed to embrace the Mark II W as the top option though, due to its rapid fire and ease of use. We also see the return of the Wonder Wap, and while I admittedly have not quite gotten that myself yet because of the stupid basketball, it's definitely an effective weapon, as I've seen a lot of easy round 100 videos. We can't forget perhaps the most heavily requested addition to zombies since Black Ops 4, Double Tap. The root beer shelf returns with a sick new machine straight out of Fallout New Vegas and a less than well received perk icon. I've noticed many players comment on how it changes the game for them, and it's hard to disagree. Makes shotguns extremely good with the augment that causes non-critical shots to do double damage, which then turn into critical damage on top of that if you use depth perception, making the ASG and even the Marine SP monsters of killing. Like to gamble? How about double or nothing, where bullets can either do double damage or no damage at all. Testing by some users show that it's really not as much as a gamble as you'd think. As of the time of this video, people are reporting that 0 damage happens extremely rarely, maybe once a match, whereas the extra damage happens far more often. There are also augments that seem like they'd buff automatic weapons, something that SMGs especially would definitely benefit from. I think the biggest thing that Shattered Vale has going for it though is the lack of special enemy spam. As I mentioned, this has probably been the biggest gripe that players have had so far with Black Ops 6. And don't get me wrong, there is absolutely still special enemies on the map. Doppelgas and even amalgams technically can still be found, but you have to literally fall asleep for an amalgam to form unless you're doing the main quest, and doppelgas get popped quickly by all variants of the Ray Gun Mark II, including the standard one. The Disciple also returns from Cold War, but this time in a far more supportive role than before. In my experience at least, it tends not to damage you unless you're right up next to it, and instead of zipping all around the map like my kids after one sip of juice, they move incredibly slowly. There's a new toxic zombie, but they only spawn in their own special rounds every 5 or so rounds, so it's not like you need to worry about them with the common crowd, which in my opinion is a good thing because it would get awfully annoying. There is one Abomination and one Elite Mangler if you do the main quest, but you don't even have to kill the Abomination, so it's really not a big deal. Throw inside Easter eggs and goodies and it's easy to see that a lot of care and effort was put into this map, and to those who doubted the future of Black Ops 6 zombies might get them back on the hype train. I'm not saying the game and map is without its issues, as it's still best if you rely on supports and you can't really just get by with guns like you used to, though the return of Double Tap does help on that pain point a bit. But Shattered Vale proves that Cold War, Vanguard, and MWZ were anomalies caused by COVID, and of course the garbage studio known as Sledgehammer not getting its shit together and making Treyarch play Hero Ball every year. I admit I'm one of the old school players who aren't necessarily thrilled with the changes that Cold War made to the formula, but I think that BO6 has done a great job of reconciling the new gameplay formula with a slightly more classic feel. Treyarch continues to deliver with the final map or two that are left. I think we should consider Black Ops 6 Zombies a new golden age of zombies. But what do you think about Shattered Vale? Do you think think it's as great as everyone says, or is it overblown by the community? I'd love to hear what you think in the comments and anything else you'd like to hear discussed.